Wow, sir, that was truly insightful. But before I let you go, I have one question for you, and that is how can young professionals contribute towards a more diverse and inclusive workplace?
I think the first start point is become aware. And the challenge always that we've seen is that because in your ecosystem or your friend circle or relative circle, some of these conversations happen, do we challenge those conversations with knowledge? First become aware of what's happening, what is really happening. For the many who want to read this, please go and look up the United Nations sites or pick up the World Economic Forum. There is also the Women's Economic Forum. Download some of the reports, read up, and understand how are women contributing to workplaces in pure economic terms. It's important to have a business case discussion versus a emotional discussion around it, because in emotional discussions, specifically when you have older people at home or at other places, uh, it becomes a very no movement kind of a conversation. But if you have data, people start understanding that. That's one. The second is in workplaces, as you enter workplaces, if you see a bias, very simply consider it and see, if I, with my own, let's say, sibling or sister or daughter or spouse, was to experience this, if they were to experience it, how would I feel? And that's the first shift in terms of inclusion. The third is focus on the ability of the person, skills, and what can people do. That's the bottom line. On disability, become a little more aware because you may not find that in your ecosystem as much. So please read up a little bit on what's happening on the laws, what technologies are available. Google's done some very amazing work with the spectacles that can create an image and it reads it out to the person watching it. So there's a lot of tech emerging, which is inclusive tech. There are canes that have a sonar technology, by the way, for visually impaired. It's the same technology that is used by submarines under sea. Imagine that in a 3,500 rupee cane, and that makes sure people don't fall. So there is a lot that has happened with tech, and as I said, examples of so many technology things. So I think start with becoming aware so that you can actually make your workplaces more inclusive as you go in.
So everyone, drop your questions in the chat box and we will try to address as many as possible very soon.
First is, what about inclusion of LGBTQ section in workplaces? Let me very quickly answer that. While the LGBTQ conversation has been on for many years in the country, very recently was, the legalization to some extent accepted. And workplaces have been talking about LGBTQ, but culturally, beyond flag marches, and I'm known to be a little blunt on this. Beyond flag marches, very few organizations have moved. Okay. And of course, there is conversation, there is greater awareness, and it's more a mindset shift than a lot of infrastructure shift. Because the infrastructure shift is very simple. You pick up any floor in a building, an office building, and label one of the washroom as a unisex washroom. That's it. Beyond that, there is not much conversation or shift that is required. The shifts needed in the mind when people work with them. Because I've managed India, Philippines as cultures. In the Philippines kind of market, it was pretty normal, and it was very internalized in terms of workplaces also. So India is a long journey of the conversations are happening in multinationals. The flag marches are happening and allyship conversations are happening, but intentional hiring, and the biggest challenge right now is the challenge of coming out in workplaces and at home. Actually, at home first and then workplaces. Our organizations doing a lot is happening. There are some organizations that have included same-sex partners into medical insurance. Are insurance companies allowing that uh, legally? Well, they are just finding a via media around some of those things. And there are global companies like, let's say, NatWest or RBS. that have even included in their Mediclaim benefits gender change surgery. So there are some very progressive organizations, and there are some who are only doing flag marches. So it's at a very early stage, is what I would leave it. Are there mandates from the government? Yes, in the public sector, 4%, but they are unable to hire because they don't know how to. And that's where the biggest challenge lies. Invisible disabilities, common misconceptions is a lot of people with invisible disabilities don't declare that invisible disability, and it hinders them later. And that's the biggest problem right now that we are trying to address. They don't declare it. I know of, and I won't name, the very seasoned school principal who was herself bipolar, but she declared it, and the school was very supportive, and the ecosystem became supportive. So, and there are architects and doctors who are bipolar. So, interestingly, they're very, very knowledgeable people. So these are realities, and that's where it is. And simply counting representation to truly measuring the impact of diversity, innovation, and performance. And again, some of the study data that I showed you, you can do some very focused studies around that to see if more inclusive or less inclusive teams, how have they operated. Classrooms that are more inclusive or less inclusive, you could do some research around that. And there is plenty of published research that is available that you can deep dive into. But again, you can do your standard control group and comparison groups and see what kind of innovation is coming out. So you can do that. But the biggest challenge with invisible disabilities is people not declaring it. But parents are becoming aware, schools are becoming very aware nowadays, and there are learning disabilities and others, and people talk about it. So things are getting better, definitely. I hope that answers.
So now let's check the Mentimeter word cloud and see what you all took away from today's session.
Amazing, captivating, insightful, knowledgeable.
I am wondering who wrote Stay Quiet though, but anyway.
Uh, Sir, looks like most of us found your session truly valuable. But before we close, any last words of gratitude from your side?
I think all I can say is that I am very blessed to be working in the space of inclusion. And I've had very inclusive teams as a leader when I was building those or organizations. And I am lucky to be now working with a range of organizations in that space so that they are able to build it. So that's all that I would actually say, that it's an opportunity to share and grow. And again, this is an amazing platform. It's a very diverse platform, parents, teachers, students, multiple generations. And I hope you can carry some of these messages and learning, and actually just read up a little more and be curious about it, and you should be able to make an impact.
Thank you so much, sir. Like, we are really glad to have you with us today.